and I'm your co host, Tamara Buchanan. Welcome.
This is a space where survivors of religious trauma and abuse share what it took to survive and what it means to heal.
Today's episode features a special guest, a podcast host and survivor whose story reminds us that healing isn't linear, it's brave, it's messy, and it's beautiful.
A quick disclaimer before we begin. Some parts of this conversation may include discussions of trauma or abuse. Please take care of yourself as you listen and step away if you need to.
And if you're finding hope or connection through these stories, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, or send us a message. We see and read every single one.
And if you have a story you'd like to share on the show, reach out by email at theawakeningpod@gmail.com. We'd love to connect with you.
All right, let's get into today's conversation.
And today I want to welcome our very special guest. His name is Topher. He also is the host of a podcast, and that podcast is called True Crimes Against Wine. So welcome in, Topher. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your podcast? I'd love to
Hey.
hear a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So my name is Topher. I am a level two sommelier, and I have a podcast with a close friend of mine where we talk about celebrity wines and liquors. We do a thorough tasting, get pretty tipsy, and talk some crap about some people. It's really fun. It's like a little bit of learning, a little bit of comedy, a lot of silliness. Very, very different vibe from talking about religious trauma, which is also something
Yes,
I have a lot of
yes,
experience in.
yes. So, how does your podcast flow go when you're doing a show?
It's very just sort of extemporaneous and off the cuff. I, of course, am the one who brings in a lot of the wine knowledge, and then my co-host, she's kind of our pop culture guru because I know nothing about pop culture. I'm completely pop culture illiterate. Um, she'll tell me things that happened like 10 years ago, and I'm like, nope, no
Yeah.
idea.
I'm not up on the pop culture either. I
Yeah,
bet you T isn't either.
yeah. So it's fun. We both get to learn something,
Much
you know?
better.
We riff off of each other.
Yes, that is. So you grew up, you were a lot like us. You grew up in the church,
Mhm.
So could you tell us a little bit about what your early life was like and what your religious structure looked like growing up?
Yeah, so I grew up with a father who, from a very early age, wanted to become a minister. And so I spent part of my time very, very young, three, four, five, in Dallas, Fort Worth, where he was going to Southwestern Theological Seminary. He got some degrees there, and then we moved back to Georgia, where my dad's side of the family is from. And, very, very small town, the whole family lives there. They've never lived more than a couple of miles apart from each other.
Yeah.
Very deeply steeped in tradition and religion. And during that part of my life, we were in kind of a Southern Baptist environment. And at a certain point, my father discovered through a pastor friend of his, John MacArthur. And that changed everything. It was already a very structured religious kind of environment that I was
Yeah.
growing up in, but it wasn't at all even close to what it started to become
Yes.
after that moment. And so after about 6 to 8 months of my father just sort of devouring every cassette tape
Oh
that
no.
Grace to You put out of John MacArthur's teaching. You remember cassette tapes?
Yes.
Barely. Um, and so he decided that the best thing for us to do as a family would be to uproot, and we were going to move out to California and
Wow.
start going to his church. And my father wanted to enroll in his seminary, and so that's what we did. And that's when things just kind of went crazy off the rails. So yeah, it was a really strange transition that happened way more naturally than I think it should have. But a lot of that also was because I grew up very, very sheltered. when I was in Georgia going to school, I was at a private Christian school.
Yeah.
So, again, a very, very structured environment, very
Hmm.
controlled. But I went from that to spending the rest of my time in school being homeschooled by my parents once
And
we
this
moved
is
out to
why
California.
Topher doesn't know a lot about pop culture.
We literally, there was a period where we didn't
You
have a
would have
TV at
no
all.
idea.
No.
Yeah. And then when we did have a TV, we never had cable. It was always just, like rabbit ears and
PBS or whatever.
PB,
Yeah. What you
PBS
could
and
get in.
TBS. That's pretty
Yes.
much it. We get the Braves game and we get PBS Kids.
Yes. My husband grew
And
up in a home where, his father called the television set the devil's eye. That's what
Yep.
he called it. Like they didn't
Yep.
have a TV for years growing up.
It was very much a be not of this world sort of mentality. Yeah.
absolutely. And as I grew up, there was no TV, computers, phones, newspapers, anything.
Wow.
So my pulp culture has been post leaving the church and filling in the timelines of
Yes.
my
Hmm.
childhood with things that happened in pulp culture because it's a
Yes.
very natural way to grow up and to understand the world around you in which you live and your
Gives you
culture,
context. Yeah.
understanding that. So I had to put, Elvis Presley was alive when I was born. Put that in that timeline. So I
Yep.
had to go through and put things in and it's still scattered everywhere. So
Oh,
I
it is.
understand.
Because our pulp culture, like, I don't know for you what yours was like, Topher, but for me, it was, the Left Behind books, Jesus Freak, Newsboys. Like, that was
Newsboys,
our
DC Talk,
pop
Veggie
culture.
Tales.
Yes, like that was our pop culture. So, all these other things, people are like, they've got New Kids on the Block, they've got NSYNC, all that stuff. We didn't have that stuff. We
Mhm.
Hmm.
weren't allowed access to that stuff because it was
Right.
worldly, it was ungodly. We were so sheltered from the reality of the world that was around us, you know?
The
And I,
closest I ever got to like celebrity gossip, as it were, was when Amy Grant divorced her husband and married
yes,
Ben Skill. And that was
yes,
like earth
that
shattering
was
in our
such a
community.
scandal back in the day,
We,
though. She was a
yep,
harlot. I
we
remember
were
that.
not allowed to listen to any of her music after that, except
No.
for her Christmas album. For some reason, that was like, I think my mom was just like, I'm not ready to give that up yet. Like that, this is a hill I will die on.
I will die on that hill.
And as I was growing up, we were encouraged because we would have the cassette decks in our cars that we had to use one of our pastors' taped sermons. So as a
Mhm.
young teenager, while I was driving, I was listening to someone speaking in tongues and, interpreting it on my radio because I had to have something on while I drove and went to the beach.
Yeah,
And my
it's
earliest
funny.
memory after I first left, I apologize. After I left, my very first movie or introduction into the world that I was now entering was Lion King. And I
That's a
say to
good one.
this
Wow.
day that that movie is still one of the most scariest movies for me because on top of it being like earth shaking and I was 27 years old, I was in a movie theater and I knew I was going to hell.
For
You're wearing
watching The
pants.
Lion King. Like that's
The
what's
Lion King.
crazy. But that my dad's new wife that he has, like she won't even go to the movies because she wants to avoid the appearance of sin. And she said that if I go to the movies, then somebody might think that I'm going to one of those bad movies. So I won't even go. And I'm like, that is just crazy to me. Like, we're not supposed to have fun because we're
Yeah.
Christian.
Yeah. My dad actually came under spiritual discipline while we were at Grace Community Church because he was playing John MacArthur's sermons while we would be on long road trips.
Hmm.
And my mom was falling asleep. And so they were like, you're training your wife to fall asleep to the sound of the voice of John MacArthur.
Wow. That is
I'm telling you,
absolutely crazy.
bonkers people.
So
As it
you,
blows my mind listening today to the stories of your past. They were
yeah.
so much a reality of my childhood till I was
Such a
27.
normalcy about it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what's crazy is that, so you were in the Christian faith, but what denomination was your church, Topher?
So from the point that we moved out to California on, it's always been basically non-denominational,
Okay.
with a lot of Calvinist leanings because
Yes.
that introduction was made to my father at Grace Community Church and became really honestly the unarguable core of everything that we believed about God, the world, the
Yeah.
Bible, Jesus, each other. It was the foundation for our theology. And it was the one thing that's like, we can have some minor disagreements about some applications of different scriptures, but this is
You will believe
this.
this or else.
And
Yeah.
if you don't have that as your foundation for your theology, they wouldn't go so far as to say you're not actually a Christian, you're not actually saved, but it was very strongly
It was
implied. We all
implied.
knew.
Yep.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
all knew that we were the ones who had it right. Everybody else
Yes,
is
everybody else. Yes,
confused.
you have it wrong.
Wait a
You're
minute.
going to hell.
Catholics aren't Christians. Speaking in tongues is wrong.
Yeah.
Just it's so narcissistic and controlled and
Yeah.
yeah, self-serving, really.
Wait a minute. We were the special ones. We spoke in tongues. We had evidence that Jesus Christ was God, the oneness of the Godhead. We, who else was in this world except apostolic Pentecostal people? I didn't know anything else existed.
Hmm.
We were the special and chosen.
And you know what? I was the special and chosen too, and I was an evangelical Christian. And this
Now
is
wait a
what gets
second.
me because we have all these different backgrounds here, all these different,
Mhm.
but we all had the same similar experiences. It stretches beyond, like, even we were talking to Misfit Amish, a few weeks ago, and even her experience stretches out into the Christian spaces. Like, religion, it permeates so many different, places, and you don't realize how far that reach is until we sit down and have
100%.
these conversations,
Yep.
and see that we all came from different faith backgrounds, but we all experienced the same type of trauma, the same type of
It's
abuse, the same type of
yeah.
horrible teachings, that warped our minds and warped our perspective of the world around us.
It's
So,
And
because
oh, go ahead.
the objective, regardless of the belief system, is the same, and that objective is control.
yes.
And
Absolutely.
so they use the same tactics, the same methods. So really, at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot of difference, like you say, in terms of the actual experience. It's just
Mhm.
it's the trappings of it that are different.
And I always
Yeah.
say this that no matter where I went, because when I left the high controlled religion, I then went to like Rhema Ministries and was there for quite a few years. But it became very difficult for me to sit in that church having all the background of oneness of the Godhead. And I would sit in church and I would be like, I'm special.
Yep.
And I had been out of my religion forever, right? But I would sit around looking at them like, they don't believe. And then I'd be like, well, how am I ever supposed to believe in the Trinity? How am I ever supposed to believe that wearing pants is okay? How am I?
Yeah.
So I wound up asking all these fundamental questions that had no place in if I loved God or not.
Yep.
But that's what I judged it by, my indoctrination on whether or not I was Christ-like.
Yep.
Yep. So when you made that transition, your family made that transition from being in, one particular church and then moving to John MacArthur's church. How did that shift the things in your household? What did your home life look like when that started to happen?
Yeah. So before that, while we lived in Georgia, my mother actually worked outside the home as like an executive assistant and very, very bright person. She, I believe, only got her associate's degree because she ended up quitting college in order to work and support my father through all of his education. Um, and so there was a lot of independence in her, a lot of free thinking, a lot of still not equality in the home,
Yeah.
obviously, because of the Southern Baptist, but it was a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving out there, her becoming a stay-at-home mom, homeschooling me, the I don't want to say the power dynamics changed because again, there was an expectation that wives would be submissive.
Yes. Yes.
But that like all of a sudden came in like steroids. And my mother began to almost have like a personality shift. Um, and you know the whole trope about like there's no zeal like a fresh new convert.
Yeah.
That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the energy that my father was bringing into the
Oh,
house
wow.
because he had just discovered this
Yes.
theology, this movement, and it was like, I can't get enough of it. I'm all
Yeah.
in. I'm chugging the Kool-Aid and asking
Yep.
for more. And we were all supposed to just kind of fall in line with that. And because I was young, I was like 10 years old when this happened.
Yeah.
Mm.
So for me, it was such a huge shift, but I didn't see it that way. It was just a normal, okay, well, now we moved.
Yeah.
We're still in a church. I'm just learning more things now instead of different things, you know? Um, but it definitely, and Tamara, I completely understand what you're saying because there was a very consistent sort of undertone of we are the ones who are correct. We are the ones who have the answers. And
Yeah.
that's both a way to, I think, keep people within this sort of high control because it feeds your ego, but it
Mhm.
also puts fear in you because you feel as though if you question that, rightly so, you are going to lose everything or be
Yes.
reprimanded because
Yes.
this is the only way to think.
Yes.
And the rep
So,
being reprimanded by your bishop or your minister, and then the deacons of the church, or however your structure is set up, is so terrifying to
mhm,
know that you're going to have to stand before the church
mhm,
and
Yep.
everybody knows.
mhm,
I have a question for you.
yeah,
First, when you moved, right? When your family moved from Georgia to California, you said that you had a huge family in Georgia.
mhm.
Was there an also a separation between you and the family, or was it just a move and you still had the family?
It was just a move.
Okay,
Still very close-knit Southern family from Macon,
okay.
Georgia. And they're all still very close-knit together. I'm the one who's no longer in contact with any of them. So yeah, and also with the exception of one of my uncles and aunts, my father kind of brought all of that teaching into the family as well.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
now they have become this like hardcore
Wow.
zealot. Yeah, and I will say
Yeah.
this too. I tell people all the time that I grew up in a cult and that my father was
Yes.
the cult leader. And I think a lot of people don't understand that if they weren't in something like we were in.
Yes.
But because you think of cult and you think of like, oh, this is somebody like saying that they're the
You think
reincarnated
of Charles
Jesus or
Manson. Yeah. Like
right,
you're
exactly.
thinking
And I'm
of
like,
Waco, Texas. They're not thinking
Jimmy
of your local
Jones.
Baptist church that has
yeah.
people that will literally do anything for that man that's behind the
Mhm.
pulpit.
And I saw it. I saw it happen
Yep.
over and over again with friends of mine where if you got out of line, you were excommunicated and nobody
Yeah.
in that church was allowed to talk to you ever again. It didn't matter if that was your sister, your grown
Yep.
daughter, and grandkids, they're out. And contact with them is just furthering sin. If they want to repent, then they can come back to us. And
Oh my gosh. That
yeah,
is
it was.
exactly how I was raised. I left a high controlled religion, and I call it a cult,
Mhm.
in West Palm Beach, Florida, escaped with my three children. And the day I left, I did not know that I would be completely erased from mother, father. I'm the oldest of five, and shunned the rest of my life for just trying to find a way to survive. And I'm like, to everybody does this. I honestly believed that that was the way it happened in churches if you did something wrong.
Yep.
And the only way that they'll accept me back is if I go back to that church, go to that altar where the sins were
Yep.
committed, quote and unquote, repent, and then they'll accept me into the fold.
You've got to come back with your tail between your
Yep.
legs, tearful apologies. I am a worm,
And
whole
you
nine
have to
yards.
deny your own humanity, your
Yep.
lived
Mhm.
experiences, like
Mhm.
stuff it all down and pretend like you never went through any of that trauma and abuse.
And what led you from where you're at in California to deconstructing and continuing your journey? Can you take us through that timeline?
Yeah. So after a few years of being in California, we moved back to Georgia in order for my father to become a full-time pastor. And because my father is such a cult leader shyster, we were not able to stay in one place for very long. So we
Yeah.
moved every year to a new place to start over completely until I was about 14, 15. And then we stayed in a suburb of Atlanta for really the rest of my high school years into my first couple of years of college. And at that point, I've always told people the best thing that ever happened to me was being born gay. Because if I had been a straight guy, I genuinely wonder, A, would I have even thought to question
Yeah.
the theology and the teachings that I was being given? Or even if I did, B, would I have the courage to
Yeah.
actually stand up and remove myself from it? I can see myself being honestly like a music or youth pastor with
Yeah.
7 kids and still in it. Yeah. Um, so it was being gay, and it's so funny because before my parents actually like outed me, I didn't even know they put a keylog on my computer so that they were like getting all of my correspondence, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was really
Covenant
wild too.
eyes.
Yeah, and it was crazy because like they had honestly no reason up to that point to ever
Question
suspect
anything?
anything. Yeah, I was like a really good kid. Um, but yeah, so it's funny because I before that happened, I was thinking, all right, I'm gonna get my degree. I'm going to move to another state or, a city or whatever. I'm
Yeah.
gonna have my two different lives. There's the life that I have when I go visit my family on Christmas and Thanksgiving, and then there's my real life. Then never the
Yeah.
two shall mix. Um, and so when my father confronted me, there was that moment of like, okay, just deny, just get through this conversation
Yeah.
and stick to the plan. And like literally a second and a half into that thinking, I was like, that's exhausting. No. And so I
Yeah.
just was like, yep, this is who I am. And at that point, I did not believe that God could love me. Like I was very just sort of resigned
Yeah.
to this is my fate
Yep.
because I knew enough to know I was born this way, that I
Yeah.
couldn't change who I am. But I also was taught that God hated
Yep.
that.
Yep.
And so if this is who I am and God hates it, then God hates me, and there's no way around any of
That's
this.
so tragic, like so
Um,
horrid to think of yourself in that type of light in regards to, God looking at you that way, because God would never view you in that manner. And it's so heartbreaking because it's so traumatizing to experience that level of rejection because you're not only being rejected by your family, you're being rejected by God, the one
yeah,
safe place where you're told that you can always go. And people don't realize how devastating that is.
it was very disorienting because basically I lost everything. I didn't have any sort of comfort
Yeah.
whatsoever. I
And
wasn't allowed
nobody
to
in
see
your
my
family
brother
was
and
going to
sister.
accept you. Yeah, because
No,
they're not allowed.
right. And but I will say this, as hurtful as that time period was, especially as I think about how that changed my views of my relationship with God, I think that I was granted a very, very big, important gift in having that thought process that God couldn't love me because it's the closest thing that I could ever get to having a non-biased
Yeah.
stance as I continue to read scripture and theological philosophy and things like that. Because I already thought that I was just done, but I crave knowledge, and so I
Yeah.
wanted to make sense of things. So if I had been in a different headspace, I probably would have run the risk a lot more of kind of reading what I wanted into the text for it to say.
Uh-huh.
But because of where I was mentally in that moment, it was just sort of like taking it as it is written, you know? And I
Do you
learned
still
so
feel the
much more
grief?
that way.
Do you still feel the
What's
grief
up?
today? Do you still feel the grief today? That's
No,
awesome.
I
There's
don't.
hope for me.
I feel so free. I feel so free because I know that what was happening to me was
Mhm.
mental and spiritual and emotional abuse.
Yeah.
There was also some physical
Yes.
abuse in our home as well. Um, my two younger siblings and I confronted our parents back in 2020. I actually flew out to Virginia, where they are right now, to do it, and basically told them, all three of us as a united front, like, we're not here to get an apology from you. We're here to explain to you why you're never going to talk to us ever again.
Yeah.
And we had that conversation, which was very difficult.
Mhm.
Um, and then promptly blocked them on everything. They have no idea about their grandkids. They're
Yeah.
It's sad, but that's their choice. They made their choice and
That's
they've
the
doubled
reality
down and
of it.
continued on it.
Yep.
And I have never felt, oh my God, the day after I woke up in Richmond, Virginia, and before I was going to meet my siblings for like an afternoon kind of around the town, I went to lunch with my husband and I sat down and I was just like, I have never felt this light in my
Yeah.
entire life because I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm in the same region as my parents, and I don't have to be on edge constantly. I'm not
Yeah.
constantly looking over my shoulder. I don't have to feel guilty anymore about only texting them on Thanksgiving and Christmas because it's so
Yes.
traumatizing to have an actual phone conversation and hear my
Yes.
father's voice. All
Mm-hmm.
of that was completely removed from the equation. And
Mhm.
to me, it was kind of the final step of getting that infection out of the wound so that it could actually start
Ooh.
to heal and
Yes.
be sanitized.
Right
Yes.
there. That is so important.
Mhm.
That
And
is
that looks
And
amazing.
different for everybody.
Right.
I'm not prescribing that people be quite as, uh, extreme as me and my siblings were, but that was
yeah.
what was necessary for us in our path for sure.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and healing looks different for everybody. Like we all know
Right.
this. Healing's not linear, it's messy, and there is no one healing journey that looks the same as somebody else's because we all have different things that we're having to process and unpack and unlearn. It's like you said, it was really hard, for us to view ourselves as good at first because we were taught our whole lives that we weren't good people. And
It's so natural to think that way because
yeah,
they started us so young. And now I've got a like 7-year old niece and 4 or 5-year old nephew. I'm sorry, I'm a terrible uncle.
no,
I'm
you're
terrible
fine.
with ages. Um, but the thought of looking them in the eye and saying, you were born full of
Yeah,
sin. You are only capable of wickedness outside of the grace of Jesus. And it's your fault
yeah.
that his blood was spilled to cover what you are.
And you're like looking at this kid. This is a child. Like I have a
Yeah.
grandson and I look at him and I'm like, you're perfect. I could never look at you like you're broken and damaged.
Insane. I know, but it seemed so just normal. Everything was
Yes.
normalized. But I think, a lot of that again comes down to the control. And, you were mentioning earlier, Tamara, about, the spiritual discipline and, going to your elders or your deacons, your pastor about things. And imagine being in a really tight-knit community with everyone has that sort of belief system.
Mhm.
And I'm also homeschooled. So I don't
Right.
have any access to the outside world. The church that we're in is like literally it. That's it for me. I have
Right.
no friends outside of that because no, you can't
Same.
associate with people outside of this. Um, and so I actually confronted a one of the leaders out at Grace Community Church after I had that discussion with my parents because at the time my father was doing a long distance correspondence course to get like certified as a biblical counselor through their university
Mhm.
program. And so the dean of that, I was like, he needs to know that this person who's going through this training to counsel people
Oh, yeah.
is abusive on literally every
Yeah.
plane. Physically, he was abusive horrifically to his children. He
Mhm.
is emotionally abusive. Yeah, everything about that. And I even had a counselor who had um, gone through that program before and so knew this man. And I don't care saying his name. His name is Dr. John Street, and he
Yeah.
can go F himself. Um, so our friend Carrie, my mom actually picked her out to be the counselor for her and my younger sister to kind of repair their relationship.
Yeah.
And it took one counseling session for Carrie to be like, oh, this is not about like a difference in thought processes
Yeah.
and beliefs. this is a case of abuse. Your daughter
Yes.
grew up abused,
Hmm.
and it took a really long time to work through that. My mom has since backed up from everything that she admitted to during that. She even like at one point had like cried and apologized for not protecting us as children. Fast forward to being like, nope, never said it.
Yeah.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Wow.
But
That's
anyway, so when I
crazy.
reached out to John Street with the help of this woman who was an eyewitness to the admissions of abuse, as well as just working through the
Yeah.
effects of it, the trauma of it, he was like, nope, that's hearsay. I'm not gonna.
What?
And he told me, he was like, well, at the time that you were being physically abused, because I outlined exactly what
Yeah.
happened. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there was a point where my father literally wrapped me in chains.
Oh my
Mm-hmm.
God,
And
Topher.
at,
That's
at
so
13,
horrible.
to demonstrate to me the chains of sexual sin.
Wow. How
Um,
horrible.
yeah, just horrific, shoving our faces in urine. Like
Yeah.
the man was objectively abusive. It wasn't like, oh, he spanked me. Um,
Yeah.
and so he was like, well, what did you do at the time? Did you go to the police or the elders of your church? And I was like, police?
You
What police?
can't
I'm
go,
12 years old.
you can't go to the elders of your church.
My
What are you
father
talking
is the
about?
elder of the church. Like,
Yeah.
what am I supposed to do? And so, yeah, he was like, well, we're not going to help you.
Wow.
And
That's insane.
the way we're raised, and you may relate to this, Toph, you are not allowed to go to Egypt for help
Mhm.
Things need to be handled within the church.
Yep.
within the four walls
Yep.
of
Mhm.
this building.
Yeah.
And
And if
they enforce that so harshly. And the discipline and the shame and the shunning is brutal from the pulpit.
mhm.
I am so sorry. I can't imagine that being also your dad at home.
Yeah, it was a weird time. And he is to this day a master manipulator. It's funny, actually, I rightfully was going through therapy after all of this to kind of work through things. And I was like, I'm so tired of just like telling you, oh, my dad said this, my dad did this. Can I just send you a bunch of the emails that he
Yeah.
sent me before I even had that conversation with him? And she's like, yeah. She calls me that same night and she's like, I just want to let you know I can't say this officially, like on paper in writing, because I've not sat down and met with your father, but just from reading his correspondence to you, the man's a sociopath. He is
Wow.
100% on that spectrum of social
Yes.
disorders.
Yes.
Um, One of the things that made it really difficult, and this would take place in front of my mother most of the time too, was after he would abuse me or one of my siblings, he would, come down from the anger and sit us down and be like, "Oh, I might have crossed a line here. And so
Oh,
if I did, I apologize and I ask your forgiveness." Now, at that point, I'm compelled to say, I forgive you.
yes, you
That
have to
there's really
because you're
only one
told
way.
you
Yeah.
have to forgive. Yep.
And then when I would say, okay, I forgive you, he would every single time remind me, all right, well, that means that now
We can't talk
that
about it
sin is
anymore.
covered.
Yep.
And if you bring it up again after saying that you forgave me for it,
You're
that's
now a
you doing
sinner.
a worse sin than what I did.
God dang. I
Just
hate
the
that shit.
manipulation.
God almighty. That
Oh,
is so
and
God.
but
I
it's
hate
not
that.
just one denomination.
No.
People think, oh, this is just mine. Almost across the board,
Yep.
the minute you give them forgiveness, they're free of everything.
Yes.
That is it. They have no accountability. They have nothing that they have to admit to and
Nothing to atone
say anything
for.
about or atone for. They're done. And the ones who are left behind that have suffered that abuse are sitting on the same pews of these horrific men
Yep.
that the only reason why they're accepted anywhere is because nobody knows what goes on inside the four walls of our churches today.
Yep.
And it's not limited to children either. It really
No.
isn't.
No.
We were a small church, so there was only one other elder who was my father's best friend and lived in our same subdivision and everything. And then a deacon, and very tight knit group, And I actually have rekindled my relationship with the other elder, and his wife and daughter. They're wonderful people, the few people that I can say in my life of the thousands and thousands of professing Christians that I've ever met who I'm like, oh, you follow Jesus. Like you're
Yeah.
not, I'm not going to call you a Christian. You're a
Yes.
follower of Jesus. And there's a
Yes.
big distinction. But anyway, during our conversations, because I had to unpack a lot of this with him too, and it came out because I don't remember how I asked him, but it was something about like, what was accountability like within the leadership group? Because obviously I was never privy to any of that.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, Pat, the deacon, and I, we were, very accountable to your father. He would ask us very pointed questions about like sexual temptations, things in our past, all of that. And I was like, okay, did he ever like confess to you guys any struggles that he was having with any kind
Yeah.
of particular sin? And he got real quiet over the phone. And he goes, I'm really embarrassed to say this, but no.
Oh,
Because I
wow.
never even thought about it, but no. And I was like, so he didn't tell you that while he was your pastor and you were his best friend, that he was struggling consistently with a pornography addiction? And that he left my mother at one point just before he met you because he didn't want to give up that pornography addiction?
Wow.
And he goes, nope, I had no idea that any of that ever happened. I'm like,
That's crazy.
that's like against even what
Yeah.
the crazy shit that John MacArthur trained my
Yeah.
father in. That's even against that. That's just my father blatantly being like, I can have my cake and eat it too. I don't
Yes,
give a
that's
shit about
exactly
anybody
what it
except for
is.
me.
It's you're
Yeah.
going to
It's
tell
in
me all
life.
your secrets so I can hold those over your head. That's what it
Boom.
is. But
Boom.
you're not going to know my dirty deeds because you're not going to have no dirt on me.
He
Then
was
that,
holding their shame
yep,
at ransom to
that is
keep them in
so
line.
sick. That is so
Exactly.
sick.
And I
And the
just
thing is, like,
recently was told, I'm sorry.
no, no, go ahead.
I was recently told by my brother because I went back to the cult that I left a month ago. And my brother looked at me and said, doesn't matter what they did. They asked us forgiveness. We gave forgiveness. Now it's up to God on whether or not they're allowed to go to heaven. And I'm like, what? What
And that's it.
did you just say?
Accountability's gone. Just like
And the
that.
thing is,
Abusers
the
get
thing
away
is, you
with it.
can believe that, but that doesn't mean that you also can't hold them accountable. Like,
Exactly.
if anything, on earth at least, that's how God designed things to work. Like, you can't just
Mhm.
do things without consequences, but we're taught
No.
that you absolutely can.
Yes, you can.
If you are in a certain level of power,
Yeah. And all you
and
have to do if you
authority,
make a mistake is just say a little prayer and just say, Jesus, forgive me. Oh, I unalived somebody. Oh, well, Jesus, forgive me. It's okay.
un- unless you're not one of the church leaders, in which case now
Yes.
you've got to sit down for weeks and weeks of counseling
And you
to
got to be at the
put you
altar
on a path
every
of
week, putting your heart
repentance.
out in front of it so people can see you putting on the show. And
Or
once
you
Mhm.
they
pay the
feel
high
like you,
tithes.
yeah, once they feel like you've put on a good enough show, then you can have your seat back, you know.
And
Mm-hmm.
and again, I want to emphasize that as lurid as all of this sounds to people hearing this from me, and it is, this is not an isolated incident. This is
No,
so common.
common.
So, so, so common. Maybe not to quite some of the extremes that I experienced, but also other people have had way more extremes.
Yes.
My younger sister doesn't remember a lot of details, but is like 100% certain that there was some sexual abuse going on as well. That is way too common a
Yeah.
theme
It's
in
so common.
evangelical churches. And
And
nothing happens. You
no.
you relocate the person.
Yep.
And the individuals. In the church that I was raised, the men stay in the church and they relocate the women to other churches to marry.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And
And
My
there's
dad was
no
brief.
it's
protection.
like totally there. Everybody knows because they've had to get up in front of everyone, confess their sins one to another, and ask for forgiveness. And then the young girls were married into other churches.
Yep.
Yep.
And shame on you if you didn't forgive that man
Yep.
Yeah.
that did the harm to you.
And
My
that's
father was briefly a pastor out in New Mexico. And this is after I'd already moved out and everything, but I heard this from my siblings and then confronted my father about it. But there was a man in the church, very prominent member of the community, owned several restaurants, family man, all that, wealthy. But he ran a conversion therapy out of
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
church for young men who were struggling with homosexuality. It's so gross even saying that.
I know,
That
I
I
know.
hate that language, that rhetoric. But anyway, so yeah, and it turns out that several of those men came forward, as well as some past students or reformees, saying that yeah, his methods were pretty radical and involved a lot of sexual abuse of us
Yes.
during that time as well. A lot of forced sexual acts on
Yep.
him and things like that. Nothing happened to the guy. The men who said it, just like you said, the men who came forward moved to other places.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
asked my father, well, why was there no public discipline? Why did you not
Yeah.
call the police? Like this was sexual assault, and some of it was on minors.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So like, and you're mandatory uh what is it, mandatory informer or
Yeah.
Reporter.
whatever.
Reporter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
reporter. Yeah, yeah. And he was like, I just don't think that sometimes it's worth it to ruin someone's life over a mistake that they made.
That's
What? That's
exactly
not
what I
a
was
funny
told.
mistake.
Like, so
What?
you can rape 10 men
Oh
and
my
then just be oopsie.
God. That is
Just
atrocious.
disgusting.
And not to get political, but we see that rhetoric happening a lot of times
Oh,
within a
right now.
certain political group right now.
And it's
Exactly. Yeah.
happening a lot
Mhm.
right
Yeah.
now. Turning a
And
And
you
I,
blind
know
eye.
that these men who commit these kind of crimes feel empowered. They feel more of an alpha male now because
mhm,
it is okay again to be a man.
yeah, yeah.
It's just appalling. I'm so sorry when I hear stories like this. It just touches my heart completely because it is so everybody has a story or a journey, but a lot of us don't talk about it
No,
because we know there is no way the rest of the world understands.
they don't.
I love that because, and I think I talked to you about this before, Heather, that when you meet another person, like the two of you,
Yeah.
it feels so relieving because okay, we already speak the same language. I don't have to like
Yes.
Right.
explain things in a different way or whatever. I can use
Yes.
exactly the language that I grew up with, and you're gonna be like,
Yes.
yep, I
Yes.
totally know what you're
I
talking
know what
about, you
speaking
know?
in tongues is. I
Yeah.
know what the
And it makes it
anointing
so much
is.
easier. It's like, oh, this is so much easier to do the shorthand than it is to like go back and be like, okay, wait, no, let me start back. Actually,
Yeah.
go first.
Right, right. And I had somebody tell me in the last couple weeks that they were talking and they weren't trying to be dismissive, but it was like, well, if you just go back to the time before the abuse happened, and then you know how you should live because
Yeah.
you have that memory. And I said, wait a minute.
I was born in abuse. There wasn't
Right.
a
Right.
time
You
when
were born.
the abuse stopped when I
Yeah.
left the church. That's when it stopped. My abuse
Right.
didn't stop until then. So there is no time to go back for. You want me to go back into the womb? Because that's where I'd be going back
Right.
to.
And I
At the very
believe
least, the
in
system is
birth,
in place to make the abuse happen. Like,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
and I
Wild.
believe in birth trauma. I believe that that goes through the
Yes.
mother if the mother is being abused, and there are studies out there that talk about that. So if you're 3 years old and that's your earliest memory, how do you go before three and remember how to be happy and
Yeah.
just live life like nothing happened?
You can't. You don't
You
have
can't.
anything. So, Topher, you've left the church. You have deconstructed your faith. So, what did your healing journey look like, and what does life look like for you now after deconstructing?
That's a great question. It was a very long process going through that healing. In my early 20s, there were a couple of gay affirming churches that I went to in the Atlanta area
Yeah.
that had actually a gay staff and gay pastors and everything. And that kind of blew my mind because I was like still in
Yeah.
that phase of like, wait. These two things don't go together. How is this happening?
You had
And
actually pointed one of those churches out to me last year at Pride when we were
yeah,
there
yeah, yeah.
together.
They march in Pride every year.
Yes.
Wonderful people. I didn't stop going because of anything negative. It just that was not my path anymore. But while I was there, they were so wonderful in teaching in a way that I completely understood through expository teaching, how incompatible it is to say that homosexuality is wrong
Yeah.
using the Bible. Like that's just not
Yep.
in there. Um, and once I understood that, I was like, oh, okay, I get it.
God
And then of course
does
continued.
love me and
That's
my
crazy.
gayness. This is awesome.
Yeah.
But
Um,
sexuality is wrong and frowned on in any form within the religions. It's
yeah.
just it's just your own autonomy and making choices for yourself. People don't understand that in these churches that we are, and I'm sure in your church as well, you're taught positions. You're taught how to please. You're taught what is right and what is wrong from the bedroom to the kitchen.
Mhm. So getting out of that and being able to be around affirming people and start to read the Bible for what it really is was so freeing for me. And I know that that can look different to a lot of different people. And
Yeah.
I am going to say, and this is no offense to anyone who is a biblical literalist, I'm not trying to argue with you or contradict. For me, a lot of the journey was me realizing that I could not take every single part of the Bible as literal
Yes. Yes.
history of that. Even Jewish people don't believe that all of that stuff
No.
literally happened. So much of it is
Yes.
allegory, metaphor, ways to start to make you think about things in a certain way rather than be held under some
Yeah.
false doctrine. Um, I also don't believe that most of the epistles were written by Paul.
Agree.
And
You're
I
correct.
don't think that Paul technically follows the religion of or the teachings of Jesus. I think that he was kind of a false teacher
Yeah.
in the things that he did right. So I don't really count all of that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. To me, it comes down to literally just following what Jesus said. And he said two things, and there was, love God,
Love your
love your
neighbor.
neighbor. And
Hmm.
I described this to the elder that I was mentioning earlier and his wife because they were asking me where I am right now in terms of my spirituality, my relationship with God. And I was like, listen, because of what Jesus said, I cannot imagine someone dying who is an atheist, a Hindu, a Muslim, a folk pagan, Wicca, whatever, and standing before him and they have genuinely lived their life just loving others as selflessly as they could. And
Yeah.
him being like, well, but you didn't put the right name on it. So
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that if
Your
there
God
is
was this
truly
path instead of this path, even though there's 50,000 paths out there to reach the same
right.
source. But,
And
we've got
it's
we've
not
got this one
relativism.
specific. No, it's not.
It's not. It's a very precise prescription. It's
Yep.
literally love people selflessly. Like,
Yeah.
and if you start when I talk to people about that who are very hardcore religious still, I get so much pushback. And I'm
Oh
like,
my
do you
gosh,
hear what you're
yes.
arguing against? You're
Yeah.
literally arguing against
Yeah.
loving people.
It's the same
Like,
way when I tell people to drop their stones. Like, oh
mhm,
no, they want to judge and ridicule and hurt people. And it's like Jesus said, drop your stones.
because
But he told us to sell everything, buy our swords. But yeah, but Jesus also told Peter to put his sword down when he cut the guard's ear off because Jesus was a pacifist. He was nonviolent. He didn't want you to be violent. The sword was for your protection, but you don't have to cut your enemy. You're supposed to forgive them and love them instead.
And
honestly, Jesus
I was
really only
taught.
prescribed violence once, and that was when men were looking at women
Mhm.
lustfully and
Yes.
as objects, and
Yep.
or Christ said, "Then pluck your eyes out."
Yep.
It's not their
Mhm.
problem; it's your
Yep.
problem.
Yes.
Mhm.
And they don't like that either when you remind them of
And a lot
No,
that.
of
but
these
that's.
high, oh,
Go
go
Oh,
ahead.
ahead.
sorry.
A
I was
lot
just
of
going to
these,
say, um, the thing about that is when you're looking at someone else's sin,
mm,
what is it that you're not having to look at yourself?
Yes. Yes.
You
Yes.
know, there doesn't have to be any sort of self-reflection if you are focusing on what everybody else is doing
Yep.
that's wrong all the time.
Right. And the other thing about that, whenever you say Peter cut somebody's ear off, Jesus flipped the tables, it was interpreted in my church that all men have tempers,
Oh,
and that's
wow.
okay.
Wow. That
And
is
those
so
were
messed
quotes
up.
from the pastor, the head bishop. See, all men have tempers. Whenever somebody was brought up, they were, now I know it was domestic violence, looking back, but they had an argument. But Peter cut somebody's ear off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They forget why Jesus was flipping the tables. It was because people were corrupting the teachings in order to profit off of innocent people,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like you're doing right now. Like,
Yes.
yeah, it's wild. But I mean, all of
Insane.
that purity culture, tithing, all of it's about control. All of it.
Hmm.
How many sermons have you sat through that talked about tithing and giving? And
Yeah.
it's insane to me.
When I
Mar
belonged to Raymond Ministries, that plate was coming. The minute they
Listen,
picked it up, it went right back down again.
my husband and I, we
Wild.
decided we were going to try a new church once, and we went to this church that we hadn't been to before, and we were like the second or third service in, like, at this church. And the pastor did a mini sermon before the actual sermon, and it was before he took up the tithe and offering. And he literally told everybody in the congregation that if you had ever not paid your tithes at any point in time in the past, and you knew that you hadn't paid them, that God was going to place a curse on your life. And the only way to lift that
Hmm.
curse was to pay back all that money that you owed today. And I don't care if you have to put it on a credit card.
Oh my
And
God.
my husband wasn't there with me that day, okay? He was sick. So I remember going home and telling him what the pastor said that day. And he was like, there's no way that he preached that. So he called somebody else that he knew that was in the church and was like, hey, man, I'm just curious. Did this happen today? And he was like, oh, yeah, the pastor said that. And he was like, we're never going back there.
No, no. When I was in high school, I actually got in trouble because one of the church leaders who handles the finances snitched on me and said that I wasn't tithing. And at that point, I'm like in late high school, I'm working at Chick-fil-A because every Chick-fil-A has to have a gay boy in high school who's closeted. Like that,
Yes,
there's like an
yes.
unwritten
It's
rule that has to
yes.
happen. Um, and so I was, as part of having a job and everything, most of it was being saved for supplies for when I was in college because I knew that that was
Yeah.
going to be expensive with the program I was going into. But I was also taking over a couple of bills um, in our household, like, the electric or the water or whatever. I can't remember what it was, but I'm paying some of the bills just to teach me responsibility and
Yeah.
see how that works and everything. Fine, whatever. But then I get in trouble for not tithing, and I'm like, to
To-
pay your salary? Because we're meeting the church in our home. So you want me to pay
That's crazy.
bills and also give you
No.
money for your salary? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And he's like,
No.
it's not about the practical aspect of it. It's,
Oh Lord.
that we're
It's
commanded
the
by God to do
principle of the
this.
thing. Yes, that's what my
Right.
dad would say. It's always the principle of the thing.
Yeah. Honestly, surprised that I lasted as long as I did because I had questions and was mouthy. At a
Yeah,
certain point, I
me
was just like,
too. Like,
makes sense.
and when I look back, I can actually see
Hmm.
that I started questioning things at a much earlier age. You know, it's just
Yes.
that you're not allowed to entertain those things. So you always shut those questions down, you shove it down. But for me, it got to the point where I couldn't stuff it or ignore it or shove it anymore. Like it's all right there, like a neon sign
I
flashing in your
understand.
face 24/7. You can't turn that
Yep,
off.
I relate to that so hard because
Hmm.
growing up from a young child, I think I was baptized when I was like 5 years old.
Yeah,
5-year-old knows
yeah.
what the heck they're
That's when I
doing.
gave my heart to the Lord because I was a dirty,
Yeah,
rotten sinner.
exactly. But then from that point on, I felt so conflicted and guilty and honestly kind of scared because I felt like I had this secret that
Yeah.
I'm not actually saved. I don't feel saved.
Yes, I
I
felt like that all the time. I always questioned my salvation. I was always paranoid, like, oh God, I said a cuss word when I stubbed my toe. I'm going to hell now. Maybe
every
that's the
little
thing.
thing,
Or if something would go wrong, I would be like, oh, that's because I'm out of the favor
punishment.
of the will of the Lord, so I'm being
Oh gosh,
punished.
that
Well,
one.
also
Yes.
praying. I would see people around me praying so
Hmm.
fervently and earnestly. And I had this dirty secret that every single time I prayed, I was just going through the motions and I felt zero connection
Yeah.
to God. Come to find out, it's because the God they were praying to is a false God. So
Yeah.
no wonder I didn't feel any kind of
Yeah.
connection to the
Yep.
divine being
Yeah.
until I got out of all of that. And now, because they shaped, it's a graven image that they just kind of
Yes.
did as an
Yes.
ideology.
Mm-hmm.
And now, knowing as I know for my truth for myself, that God is all encompassing,
Yeah.
huge, loving,
Yes.
whatever, all of that, it's so much bigger. And I'm like, wow, you guys really in in an attempt to seem as though you have connection and are holy, you missed the whole bus and
Yeah.
like
Right.
shrunk God down to
And
try and fit
warped
in this
God's
tiny little
personality.
box.
Yeah, and in the same time, you completely warped God's personality and character to not even reflect who they were intended to be in the first place.
Yeah.
Right.
It's kind of like I'm sure that you guys probably grew up with this too, because just hearing the other things you grew up with, when they talk about missions work,
Yes.
and I had so many questions about, like, well, what about an African tribe who never hears about Jesus? And they're
Yes,
like, this is why missions are so
yes,
important. You don't want them to go to hell.
yes.
And I'm like, but okay,
But
if
there
they've
are,
not actually heard and they've got multiple gods, maybe those gods are just a representation of all of the different complexities of
of
God and
God.
his personality and his
Yes.
facets and everything. So, I mean, like, is it really that
Yeah.
different? Also, I learned this only a couple of years ago through talking with some friends of mine who are rabbis and going through rabbinical training right now. That I can't remember the term for it, but Judaism is not monotheistic.
Yeah.
They do only
Yes.
worship Jehovah because that is their God, but
Yes.
they do believe in the existence of other gods.
Yes,
Um,
they do.
Baal and Moloch and all of the
Mm-hmm.
Ishtar, all of those would have been for them in that time period. They were like, no, these are real gods. It's
Yeah,
just
they
that
were
that
just
is the God of the
inferior gods.
Phoenicians.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
They're
in the
they're
Ten
little g
Commandments,
gods.
right. And that's why in the Ten Commandments, it separates not having a
Yes.
graven image, but also having no other gods before me. Because
Yes.
basically, God was saying, yeah, you can acknowledge these other gods, but I'm your chief God. I'm your principal God.
Yes.
I'm the one, I'm the big guy here. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God, that like opens up so
So much.
much.
And it
Yeah.
makes God go from being really small and narrow to so big and expansive and inclusive.
I
Yes.
will say the God of the Old Testament a lot of times is kind of a dick. Just
Oh,
saying.
yes.
He
Yes.
gives me
Yes.
Zeus vibes, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
very egotistical.
Yeah. I'm just coming to smite everybody.
Right. Anytime it's like, oh, I'm a jealous God, and I'm like, man, aren't you a little bit above that?
Yeah.
You kind of created the universe, like
And that's
maybe.
not one of the fruits of the spirit. So,
Exactly.
Right. There are
Speaking of
those.
which, when I said that I don't really jive with Paul, but
yeah.
you know how when you talk to evangelical Christians and they always mean the same thing when they say this, and you tell them, well, no, we're supposed to love each other. And they're like, yes, but
But yes, there's
love
always a
doesn't mean
but.
accepting their sin.
Yes.
What sin are they talking about, by the way? It's always
Oh
homosexuality.
yes, it's all it's
Always.
never pedophilia.
Always.
It's
Yeah.
never pedophilia. It's never greed. It's never, ignoring the poor or the hungry. It's
Yeah.
always being gay.
Y'all are obsessed with me.
Yes.
Calm down. Um, but
I
whenever they say
actually
that,
am.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's so funny because in the Bible, actually there's an explicit definition of what love is. And what you're doing and saying right now doesn't fit that definition at all. And they're like, oh, what are
Exactly.
you talking about? And I'm like, have you literally never read First
Yeah.
Corinthians? Love
Mhm.
is
Love is
patient,
patient.
love is
Love is
kind,
kind.
keeps no
Yep.
record of wrongs. Like,
Yep.
show me there where it's like, well, let me pick up this stone and club you in the head to get some sense about you.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me
You
pick up
won't
my
find it
Bible
there.
and hit you over the head with it. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
And then
So,
they usually
Topher,
exit the conversation and block me.
where are you today on your journey um, in belief systems? And what words would you give to encourage others that have been on the path that you are and are searching and looking and wanting to make sure that there's somebody else out there
Yeah.
that they can connect with?
Well, as an expert, um, as somebody who has and is still flying by the seat of my pants,
Hey,
um,
that's me every day.
I think that's just reality. And I think we all need to
Right.
acknowledge that each one
Yeah.
of us, that's the step one. Step one is you will never be an expert. You will never know what you're doing.
Yes.
Um, when my little sister called me sobbing at 17, she's 10 years younger than me, called me sobbing at 17 saying, I don't know what to do. I don't think I believe what I was brought up to believe, and I'm terrified. And I'm like, yep, that is scary as
Yeah,
fuck.
it
That
is.
is
It's a
absolutely terrifying.
terrifying place to be, to
Your
have your
whole
whole
world.
world is ripped out from
Yeah.
underneath you. Yep.
And what I told her was, I want you to become a knowledge sponge. You read
Mhm.
any and everything you can get your hands on, whether it is books that are consistent with our upbringing and teaching, whether it's about Zoroastrianism, like
Yeah.
everything you can. Because here's the thing, at the end of the day, if you end up reading all of this stuff and then coming back and being like, no, I actually do believe what I was brought up to believe, you know that you know it. You know
Yes.
why. It's not just because someone told you to. And that is
Yep.
priceless. But also, you might start to evolve and start to believe, okay, well, I think that this thing is not right. And so I need to throw that away. And that's
Yeah.
what deconstruction is. People tend to think of it as, oh, I'm just
Complete
getting rid of,
destruction. Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah. And I'm like, no, this is about taking apart the Lego set
Yes.
and putting it back together
The
in the
right
shape that
way.
it is supposed to be. Exactly.
Yep.
Hmm.
And so for me, that has taken the form of continuing to try and be that knowledge sponge. I love discussing the philosophy of faith and spirituality and the Bible and
Yeah.
all of that. I think it's so interesting, not as a debate, as a way to learn from other people and be not a no but as a yes and. And I
Yeah.
think that having that mentality is probably the biggest, most helpful thing that you can have as you're working towards healing and becoming the person that you were supposed to have been all along before that got hijacked by someone.
Can I say this? No, but and yes, and is amazing way of looking at that. Thank you.
Yeah.
That just
Yeah.
like sent off light bulbs in my head. I'm like,
She just like,
that's
woo.
refreshing. No,
I mean,
but yes, and
yeah,
wow.
because it really shatters and challenges that mentality that we've been talking about of we're the chosen ones, we're the special ones.
Yes.
Because Tamara, I don't even know you. How am I supposed to say that your experience is inferior to my experience and
Yeah.
that therefore I have a superior understanding and knowledge? Because I can guarantee you there is a shit ton that you could tell me that I would just be like, oh my God, I never considered it from that
Yes.
angle and lens before.
Yep.
That
Exactly.
changes so much, you know?
And we don't
We're
know
supposed to learn from each
everything.
other.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's one thing that really hinders us is we are given that prescription and that idea that we already have it all figured out. And when
Hmm.
you exist in that mindset, you don't leave any room for growth or expansion or even more development in your faith itself because you already know who God is. They can't do any more than what you already know.
Yeah,
So, you are hindering yourself in so many different ways on that front. But yeah, you presented that in a really incredible way.
thank you.
And I
And
believe the
I,
three of us would say this. I am a better Christian today as a Michigan atheist
Yes,
than I ever was as a
absolutely.
full-blown apostolic Pentecostal tongue-talking holy roller girl.
Yeah.
Amen. Amen.
Because you're given room to stretch your love now instead of having it
Absolutely.
distorted. Yeah. I do. I want to thank you guys so much for having this podcast because I think that it's projecting a lot of perspectives and voices out there to other people who also maybe need to have like a little jump start
Yeah,
in
Mm-hmm.
how to think of things because it can be very overwhelming in those beginning stages. You don't really know
it
where to
is.
turn because there's so many options.
Yes.
Um, but also, I think it's really great, and I would love to hear if this is accurate. But we're talking about getting different angles and perspectives as you've been talking to so many people from different backgrounds, how has that impacted your understanding of who you are, what you've been through, where you want to continue to go? Has it been impactful in that way?
If I may go first,
Go ahead.
I never talked to anybody once I left my church at 27 years old. When people would ask me about my mom and dad, brothers and sisters, I said my mom and dad passed away in a car accident and I was an only child. And I left it that way. Then COVID hit and I needed something to do. And TikTok was available. And
Same.
for the first time in
Yes.
my life, I was able to find others, communities,
Yeah.
people that I could rely on and know that what they were saying was facts just because the way they were presenting it on a TikTok live. And like you, I became so curious about the world around me. But I wasn't until I was like 49, 50, about, yeah, 50 years old that I started exploring. Now, I've been an atheist since I was 37. I
Yeah.
called myself secular humanist. But by the time I was able to say, I am an atheist woman, I've had so much information and so much love for the world and humanity and being a humanist that it's like just open doors to me to find communities and people like you that growing up I would never be allowed to speak to
Yeah.
or love
I would have never, same. Like, I
at
would have
all.
never spoken to Topher. Like, I was told that you would have sent me to hell. That's what I was raised with. Like,
And
Yep.
and for me, these conversations that we're having, they're
yeah,
so important because not just for the fact that, people are getting to hear these stories, but people are getting the opportunity to actually share what it is that they've experienced in a place where we were told was the safest place on earth, surrounded by the safest people on earth.
Yep.
And, that has deeply impacted my life, hearing the stories of trauma survivors. I was a lot like T when I first left the church. I wasn't talking about deconstruction. I wasn't sharing anything. I was very quiet at first because I was processing, I was healing. I had to do a lot of solitary work on my own before I was ready to come out before the world and start running my mouth. But as soon as I found my voice, I haven't lost it. And I won't let anybody take that from me again because it's so important to share these stories, to continue to shine light on all this darkness and all this harm. So for
mhm,
me, it's literally given me purpose. Religious deconstruction has given me purpose to help people heal because there are so many victims of Christianity out there. And some of them show up at their churches every Sunday and raise their hands and speak in tongues. And they don't
Mhm.
realize that they're still victims and that
Yeah.
they're praying to the God that is victimizing them and traumatizing them and causing their children to leave them or have severe trauma or anxiety or PTSD. Like, these are all the real consequences of this faith. So, for me, it's just really has been a life changing thing to be able to be here with people like you and talk about these things. Because for so many years, we were in that environment where we were told, you don't talk about the problems of the church. You don't question the man of God. You
Mhm.
don't question God themselves. You don't dare question the Bible or how it's been presented to you or interpreted or anything like that. And we are reaching a point now where we are taking it back. We're taking it all back for ourselves. See, the church stole it from us and they gave us a false interpretation and representation of what it should be. And that was subjugation, slavery, abuse. So, yeah, what we're doing here is really important. And I'm grateful
Yeah,
for
I
you
think
being
that's
here.
so beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, both of you said such beautiful things just now. And it's funny because I have a theory. It's just a theory, but it's kind of a hot take. And that is that at the point when the early church started, I don't think it looked anything even structurally like our modern
It
churches do,
didn't.
in the sense of like people sitting, listening to someone extrapolate their beliefs
Yeah.
about a particular writing, because
It
also
looked
they didn't
just
have
like
those writings
this.
yet.
It
I
looked
was going to say,
just like
this is
this.
church. This
Yes.
is church. And this is what it's supposed to be, talking about how to better love other people, how
Yes.
to honestly love ourselves, because I think you do have to have that. And I was brought up to
Yes.
think that that's a very, very bad
Yes.
thing. Like a little bit of residual in my head just now was like, oh my God, did you just say that out loud that you
Yes.
need to love yourself? But
Yes.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
think that what you guys are doing is incredible.
I always say this at the end of the day, wherever we are at on our journey, love wins.
Always. Love
Amen.
over everything. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Topher. We are going to leave Topher's links in the show notes so you can catch an episode of that True Crimes Against Wine podcast. You don't want to miss it. It is a
It's
really
much
good
lighter
show.
hearted than this, so don't think it's
Yes.
the same vibe. You'll be less intellectually challenged for sure.
But I can bring
Thank
my
you for having
wine
me.
and
Right, I
enjoy.
know.
Yes, you can sip during that show or this one. And as always, if you guys enjoyed this episode, please hit that subscribe button and leave us some comments and feedback. We read every single one of the notes and messages that you leave us. We'll catch you back here again next week for another episode of The Awakening.
The preceding podcast is solely owned by its host or hosts and is distributed by BIG Media LLC. Copyright 2025, all rights reserved.